That's
I think for me,
fair.
it's I grew up on PS2, so I always used mouse and keyboard, and then I only got into PC when I got my first PC. Now it's for like free to play Korean MMOs,
Mhm.
and even then it was a laptop, so it wasn't really designed to fit the controller. So I always used up in the arrow keys, not the AWS keys.
Mhm.
Um, so it was just like, and then everything, and then I would use my left hand for everything else, and so I would never actually have a mouse. I would always just be changing camera direction that way. So it's like the minute controllers came, I was like, thank Christ. Plus, it's like you have if you're on an MMO and it's an old school MMO, like the number of buttons you do have, it's like Shift, Alt, and then it's just like I'd rather just do this on a controller.
Oh yeah, and you get that controller muscle memory.
Yeah.
Such an enjoyment.
Plus, it's ergonomic. Everybody's like, oh yeah, get an MMO mouse, and I'm like, I'd rather die than have a
I have an
keypad.
MMO mouse. I have like one of the little
That's
like
fine.
sticking keys, and I'm just like, no
I've
man.
got the Razer MMO mouse. I cannot stand the amount of buttons on it, and I've got quite big hands as well. Like I've got penis fingers, so it's just like trying to remember.
What was that?
where the
What was
hell-
that movie? That was like all about the different multiverses. It was like a real good multiverses movie done right. But yeah, we were like some like these elongated fingers because it's
Yeah,
like in the world of infinite, decisions have been made. These are the effects of those things.
it's just like, but using it on an MMO mouse is just annoying.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, controller all the way. It's not a deal breaker, but I generally do prefer it, and I will try and make a game work with it. Like Guild Wars 2 still doesn't have it, but I use the Steam overlay
Nice.
to do it that way. It's
I wonder
not
if Guild
perfect,
Wars
but
3 is going to support controllers. What do y'all think?
It'll probably, yeah, it'll probably.
Probably.
It would just make so much sense for them to do that because you could put that work into Guild Wars 3 and then you have another, 10,
You can do
20 year
Guild Wars
project.
2 with it pretty well because it's got the
yeah.
action camera,
Yeah, exactly.
so you can make it work with the action camera. But it works better with certain classes like Ranger or Necromancer. Like if you're doing Elementalist, where you've got the different modes, it can be quite cumbersome. So you have to set it up almost per class, if that makes sense. And that gets even worse when you've got the different subspecializations like of the class, and then it's like, oh great. But yeah, no, Guild Wars 2 is fun. I just wish the story and writing were better in Guild Wars.
Yeah, they need Guild Wars needs better marketing is what it in my mind it boils down to because it's like whenever I'm like, oh hey, they're doing an update or an expansion, it's like they're like where is that information? What's going on with that? It's like, oh
Yeah, ArenaNet is kind of like a forgotten developer at this point, I feel.
Yeah, and it's funny how like they confirm Guild Wars 3. It's like, guys, we know Throne of Liberty's not doing great, but do not worry, we are working on Guild Wars 3.
Although I am surprised about the amount of pushback Dawntrail's gone.
So what kind of pushback are you seeing?
Story pushback, class pushback.
None of this
Civil
seems
Wars.
surprising. Like I just was like, you're starting a whole new story, so you don't have that ability, you don't have that thread. They with the like when you play Viper, and you go into anything post level 80, it's just you're like, gosh, I hate this class, I hate this job. And then everything after that, you're like, oh, this is really fun. I see exactly what they're trying to go off, do with it. It's wow, that's cool concept.
Yeah.
And so
I've seen like post game pushback, like raid pushback. I've just seen like a lot.
You're dealing with though in that pushback, you're dealing with a lot of people who are burnt out and they are either not able to admit it to themselves, or they just are going to start to like you're watching just like I think what we call the standard transition from Sprout to veteran, where all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is same thing. Like where's all the content? So same thing with Endwalker. Endwalker dropped, and all of a sudden, all the new people who just came in and like we're like, oh, Shadowbringers, it's got this, it's got this, it's got this, and it's like, yeah, Endwalker is gonna add that eventually, but it doesn't all drop on expansion day,
I never think burnout is the correct term because burnout only happens when you feel like you don't have control over the situation that you're in.
Okay.
And that's what burns people out. And I feel like this has been happening for. It gets worse when the game developer doesn't update what I would effectively call system rot, where they're not actively adding in improvements to already existing systems. Like they're getting to
Well, and that's been a
update.
problem that Final Fantasy 14 has had since, you know, Heavensward, where it's that they would make improvements and changes, but they would never trickle down into the base game, with some exceptions, because we've started seeing them do that for a handful of things, which is, I think, a real positive move. But you see just how much time that actually then takes them to do these things, and you're like, wow. Like, and so with the graphical update, the thing is, I was like, I'm sure we're going to see plenty of people who are frustrated at you know, the graphic update, saying like, we could have gotten something, you know, we could have gotten this or that or the other thing, and they insert the thing that they enjoyed the most in place of that. Because like, I can tell you, and I said it hands down, I do not notice the graphic update one bit.
For me, I notice it, but if I take my glasses off, I don't. And I've got
maybe my eyesight's finally deciding to trickle down or something like that. But like,